Hello and welcome to Mostly Minnesota Music Podcast Edition. I'm Ann Tracy and I'm here with John Arthur Schmidt. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm delighted to talk to you. I know that you've got a new album that just came out from the Marrow, but I might even like to start with the kind of the basics. You have an interesting background. You got into music young, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about you first.
Yeah, I did. Music was sort of always a natural inclination for me, I guess. So my mom started me out on the piano as an elementary schooler, and found out pretty quickly that my ears were very good. I could pick up on things by ear, and my teacher was always kind of harping on me for staring at my hands, and I would just learn to play by what she was playing. But I was a little too ADD for focusing on the music, I guess, and reading music. So it didn't really stick for me. But my dad brought a drum set home when I was like 9 years old or something, and just fell in love with it and spent hours on that thing. And I feel like it was within days I was playing along to songs and just kind of self-taught with natural rhythm kind of thing. And yeah, so throughout middle school and like high school, I really was more of a drummer, and played in a local metal band for about 7 years with a couple close friends, and it was really one of the best times of my life, like highlights growing up was doing that. But guitar was sort of an afterthought, I guess. I learned to play some riffs and stuff for the metal stuff we were doing. I picked up the guitar and I could was kind of getting a handle on it, but didn't really go much further with songwriting until I was about 19. So
And then you put out an album when you were 19.
Yeah, I did. So I went off to college reluctantly, kind of at the forceful hand of my parents and people saying, you got to go to college. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, and didn't bring a drum set, and the band had kind of disbanded, as far as we all just kind of went separate ways at that point. And so I brought a guitar with me, and because it was a vocational school, I was actually renting an apartment. It didn't have a campus kind of thing. It was out in Fargo, North Dakota. Mm-hmm. And I just wasn't doing well. I wasn't with the right friends, and I wasn't liking school. And so the guitar kind of became my refuge. Sitting in my apartment, that's when I started really finding writing as an outlet, and found I enjoyed it, and was really connecting with songwriters. I started to really be inclined to listen to people like Sufjan Stevens and Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan, and people that were just very lyrical. And so yeah, I only made it a few months in college before I dropped out. But I would say by the spring of 2008, I'd already accumulated like close to maybe 30 songs or something. And super close friend of my dad's and a musical icon in the area named Joe Dietelm had his own studio, and he just kind of opened it up to me. He saw what I was doing and wanted to help me out, and he let me do some yard work for him, and I started using his studio. He kind of showed me the ropes, and I put out a full album, I guess that's that fall. So that was the beginning of my songwriting journey. And then it just my life took a radically different turn for the next 7 years or so.
And I don't want to pry, but if you want to tell us a little bit more about that time, we're open to it.
Sure. Well, so yeah, I released the album and I was 19, and I had big plans. I wanted to pursue, I guess, the songwriting music world more. And as I was wrapping up that album, though, I had a very impactful kind of transformational spiritual awakening in my life that just put my focus much more on God and going deeper in that. And I was sort of torn between two worlds at that point, and like, what do I want to do with my music, and what about this sort of the spiritual calling I feel. And then within 5 or 6 months, I met the woman of my dreams. So I turned 20 years old in November, and then just a few months later, I met Michelle, and within 6 months we were married. So I was this super young, really just a young boy in love. And so it was just kind of a crazy turn of events. And I guess my dedication to spiritual things and to this new relationship consumed me for the next 7 years. And I mean, it still does in a good way, in a good way. But I was so young, and we had our first baby too within a year. And so it was like, all of a sudden I'm a dad. And yeah, so making music, I was still writing. That had already become sort of a part of my life, or a practice, but just wasn't in the studio. I wasn't playing gigs. I was just working and providing and accumulating this, catalog of songs. And it wasn't, and trying all kinds of stuff. We moved tons of times. We moved cross country and just trying all kinds of stuff. And it was, I guess, 2014, I suppose, I'd kind of come to the end of my attempts to doing different things, and had all these songs I didn't know what to do with. So I decided I'm going to go in the studio and start recording it, I guess, and releasing music again. So
I am trying to wrap myself around being 18 years old in an apartment in Fargo, and within 2 years you've found yourself married with a baby. That is some
yeah, it was a big
fast
turnaround.
forwarding.
Yeah, it was kind of a compressed season. And I definitely, in my family and my circle of friends, was like the last person they ever thought would get married too. Like, I was definitely the wild kind of party guy in a metal band, just kind of daring and spontaneous, and all of a sudden I'm just on a totally different path. Yeah, it was definitely a major turn, but songwriting was definitely a healthy I don't know what you call it, a balancer in my life or something. So definitely processed a lot of stuff through that. And I think it's been kind of an anchor, for me. So.
Well, and it's funny to hear that you have a heavy metal background, because that is not prevalent in From the Marrow at all. It's
Yeah,
you have all of the polish,
right.
none of the brassy, none of the metal in this album.
Yeah. I would say the only part where it maybe pokes its head is at the end of Beautiful World. There's like this long outro where it kind of goes into this big drum part, and I actually was able to do the drums on this album, which was fun. The previous two, I'd actually brought in a good friend named Reese Kling, and he did all the drums on the previous two records. But this one I wanted to challenge myself and get back in it and kind of build the songs up a little more from the ground up. And so when I was going over it with Matt Patrick, that particular song, I described the ending as like, yeah, it kind of breaks open into this big open part and kind of almost like metal drums. And he kind of laughed about it. But then when I started playing, he was like, I kind of see what you mean. But that might be the little part where it like rears its head, a little bit of metal influence in my drumming there. But yes, otherwise you're right. It's very subdued and folky and kind of earthy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you start with Library Land, I was a reference librarian for years, so of course I'm gonna love that song. But
Oh
it has
yes.
almost like an early Kinks, well-respected man kind of a sound to it.
Oh yeah, I love that you mentioned the Kinks. Yeah. That was one of the bands I would have been drumming to when I was 9 or 10 years old. So I drummed to the Trogs and the Kinks and the Guess Who.
Awesome.
And my dad was kind of a British Invasion fan. So that's the kind of stuff he turned me on to. And that's how I learned to drum actually. So
It's funny
yeah.
because I could hear more the influence of that. It's kind of going back to the I don't know if it's fair to say the pure, but kind of the stripped down as opposed to the big drums, the
Oh yeah. Yep. I agree with you totally.
and that sound. I mean, the sound throughout is it's just very calming. It's very soothing. It's very, but I want to know more about the album, about the song itself, because it seems like there's a
Yeah.
um and certainly a transformation that's happening. There are songs that have a sadness to them, but with a redemption. Somehow
Mm.
you've got that fine blend.
Yeah. Well, you go through things in life and it's not always easy or pretty or polished, right? And like being a young dad, and my wife has had some health issues that have been very debilitating, and even recently in the last few years it's been tough. And I've had, couple daughters in in and out of the hospital for different things, and you just I've found in this last year and a half or two, I just felt free and able to just write about whatever I needed to write about. So when I mentioned having this spiritual awakening and really dedicating my music and my songwriting more to uh, that theme and more into worship, it was like once I got those songs out and I got those 2 albums out, it's kind of like I was able to tap into more where I was at currently and some of the stuff I was going through. And I think that comes out in this record. It's more just like there's some grit to it and um, some pain that is coming through, but it definitely, I think, it presents it in a way that is beautiful and not heavy, I don't think. But yeah.
No, it's well, and it's very interesting to hear your story now, because as I said, listen to the music, and I didn't know your story before, but there is I
Mhm.
mean, I think of a song like Tree of Life, which, I mean, you bring up
Yeah.
the Prince of Peace, and there's obviously a spiritual, if not religious, aspect to it. But you talk
Yeah.
about that your presence is enough for me, but even hearing it and not knowing your story, I felt like you were the presence for someone else as much as there
Mm.
was a presence for you.
Mm. Yeah. There's definitely songs where I feel like I'm crossing in and out of like um the spiritual dimension and then also my relationships in my life for sure. There's times where I feel like this song could be about my wife, and her presence and her beauty is. And there's definitely many times when you say in the dead of night there's a quiet voice, um it'll be all right. We go through dark seasons where you don't know how you're going to make it through another day. We've just had times where we've got nothing in the bank, or we've gone to the doctor's office so many times and they can't figure out what's going on. And that's part of actually what's in the song. Uh, Sweetness is without I'm making my wife upset and uncomfortable. There's just been some really challenging seasons where uh, there was just no answers for the pain she was in, and I'm trying to pull us through it with the kids. And um, so yeah, but some of the most you have to be acquainted with, I think, you either shut down or you process it, and try to see the light and see God's goodness in the midst of it. And that's where I've tried to where I try to come from, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and I think if you, when you have kids, you realize that there are some days where you're there for them and there are some days where they're there for you,
Yeah.
and you get the right smile at the right time, or you know, I suppose, for me, be the right, yes, mama, or, you just,
Oh
the
yeah.
right grabbing onto the finger at the right time, that you're like, okay, that's all I needed. That'll
Yes.
get me through the next 2 hours,
Yes. Those moments where you feel like you're doing something right. Right? And it's like, maybe I am doing something right, and my kids are doing well and they're listening. Wow. And then yes. And then those unexpected, yes, they just run up to you and give you a big kiss, and you're just like, you have no idea how much I needed that right now. So yeah, those things, that's what it's about. And that's, there's a lot of things in life you can to write about, but definitely for me, that family and the presence of those things has brought depth to me, and I think to my songwriting. So
Well, even with a song like Sweetness, and I mean, you do mention Michelle in the song, so I knew it was somebody
I
named
did.
Michelle,
Yeah, now I
but
gave it away.
yeah, and I could, I could feel the watching of the suffering, but I didn't know the
Mm,
backstory, but just that you could even get that emotion across. But what's funny about your music is I mean, you do write about a lot of life's hard times. You feel that someone's in the hospital, so those dark hours, but you do it in
mm,
a way that is that feels like you're being lifted up through the process. Like you have
that's
the
good.
the I don't know if it's the prescience or the ability to look back and see
Yeah,
we're getting to a place. This is a transformation, not just a,
yeah, yeah.
and
Oh, I
it's,
appreciate that. That's good.
yeah.
Um, there's the one line in Sweetness where um it says, if I could be a better man, well, I've tried, but it's in the dark where love is made. Um, I love how lines like that end up coming out when they feel true. Like, I don't ever write about something that I don't feel is true or that I need to say. And sometimes when you're writing, you're getting the answers you need that you didn't have before you wrote the song. So for me, sometimes I'm just writing what I need to write. And then as I'm writing, it's almost like the conclusion or a certain piece or a certain, yeah, it kind of brings a closure or something to it when I'm able to write about it. And that line in particular, I remember being kind of like a aha moment where it's in the dark where love is made. And it's like, that's where you don't know where you're going, or you can't see the next step. And it's painful. It's kind of some dual imagery there, but it's a real thing. And you have to learn to go through dark seasons. And that's where I think your love is forged. It's not just when times are easy and nice and good. Anybody can be nice and loving when times are good,
Yeah,
right? It's when the times are tough that your real fabric of who you are is kind of made.
yeah.
So
Well, it seems like you write about that too, with it's all falling, and the
yeah.
unraveling and the kind of the hiding and that imagery.
Mm, yeah, that was I wrote that song in it was like July, I want to say, of 2000. Oh, was it 2020? Yeah. And there was so much going on then, and I definitely felt like I was tapping into something for me personally. um what I thought was interesting about that song is it has kind of the lyrics are sort of dark, like it's all falling down, it's all unraveling, you can't patch it up, but I never felt like it was negative. I always kind of felt like, well, sometimes things just need to fall apart. Sometimes we need to unravel because it's in this effort of holding it all together that we're actually not allowing the pain or whatever we're going through to, we're not vulnerable enough to let people see it. And so I think it's when we're vulnerable and sometimes you just need to let it out, that change can come, good change, healing can come. And I kind of felt like maybe that's where we're at as a nation and in the world, is some things just need to get turned inside out and unravel and be repaired, or be healed. So that's kind of where I was coming from there, I guess.
There's this funny, as you talk about it, there is kind of a seasonality to yourself, like where I respect the idea of the seasons, or that the transition from the light to the dark, and that sort of, there always is that yin and yang, I think, to the music that you sing, because there, as you said, there's some very sad imagery here, there's some very dark imagery, but it does have that balance that, I think that daylight never left, I think that's,
oh yeah,
when you can juxtapose something like that.
Yeah. Oh, that was another, definitely, I felt like that was a very spiritual song. And actually I wrote it, so we started working on the record, we were supposed to start in the spring of 2020, which is then right when COVID broke out, and then my kids were all school age, so they were, like I said, I had kids when I was 20.
Living the dream right there, my friend.
Yeah, I probably don't think I look that old, but I do have kids, and all three of my kids are in school, and but they were all sent home, so it was like, now here we are, and they're just not going back, and then my actually my income, my job, my day job was shut down, and so I was self-employed. Actually, I run my own side business, and so my income dried up, but I wasn't able to immediately shift into this unemployment thing. Like the self-employed was like a new territory for people whose businesses were being,
yes, I remember, yes, yeah,
held up. So it actually took me 8 months of wrangling with the state of Minnesota and to actually get it through. I heard of other people, it went much smoother than that, but it took me, I don't know, but from when I started and when I first got my compensation, it was 9 months actually. And I had already gone back to work and was working again, but for a season, my income was not there, and I had to pull the plug on the record, and which was originally going to be an EP. It was just going to be a shorter thing, and I started getting so many new songs. Actually, I was in a season where I was finding a lot of inspiration, I guess, and tapping into some stuff. And each time I wrote a new song, I was like, this has to go on the EP. And the EP kept getting bigger. And I got into the studio in July or so of 2020, and we did a few songs and got working on it. And then I had to delay it again. And by the time we got into like the bulk of the tracking, I had definitely more songs than I knew what to do with, but I had enough where I was like, this is what I want to be on the record, and it's going to end up being kind of a full thing. Yeah, I kind of lost track of where it was originally, what your original question was there.
Yeah, I don't. Well, you've got 10 songs on the album, and it's, I mean, it's just interesting for me to hear how the process.
Oh,
yeah,
Daylight. You were talking about.
There you go.
I'm so sorry.
No.
That happens to me all the time. But Daylight is a newer song. I wrote it during that period between July 2020 and December 2020, but it's actually inspired by an experience I had all the way back in 2008. So something I'd never written about. And but it's meant to be sort of a a veiled thing, and I think it's good to leave some mystery out there for people, but it was definitely a spiritual experience, and that's where I was drawn from. But yeah.
I think there's something about the last year and a half, now we're coming up on 2 years that we've all gone through that makes us all, it's easier to tap into some of those emotions that aren't, we're long past the, how are you? Fine, thank you. How are you? It's,
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah. So I think that this album is very timely because I think people are ready to take a look at that, and
Mm,
especially open to taking a look at when there's that balance of the transformation, because Criminy, we
mm.
hope we're transforming into, as you say, we need to unravel and we need to piece again,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. I mean, because I had so many times where it was a struggle, and it got delayed so far past my original target date that, you know, you do get discouraged. It's kind of already difficult being, musician, songwriter, and then in these rocky times, it can be difficult to stay on course and want to keep doing it, but so yeah, it's encouraging to hear, and I think in the end everything worked out as it was meant to. And if it had gone my way, I mean, I'd have had it done early spring summer of 2020, and it would have been a 4 or 5 song EP, and over 7 of the songs on the record would have never been written. I would have moved on, and it was that delay period where I just had to dig down, and I found a whole new chapter kind of open up in my songwriting. And yeah, Eagle Eyes, Just Give It a Try, Daylight, Sweetness, what else is Blue Tarps, Love Song Lullaby. Those were all like after the fact. None of those were forecast to be on the original EP. So those was all kind of developed in the process, which is something I'm pleased with and feel, I don't know, brings a certain presence to the record, and it's just so fresh or something. Yeah.
I love the format of Love Song Lullaby. You've kind of got that round going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That was
like that.
something. So explain a little further what you mean
Just
by that.
the way that you're singing as if you were singing around with other people. The the row, you're
Oh,
yes.
the row your boat.
The row your boat around. I mean, that kind of around. But the intermingling of the looping over yourself. I should have gone for the more grown up word for it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, a lot of these songs we intentionally approached it from the beginning like to be a stripped back kind of production style. So, and that's the kind of songs I was writing, and really digging into the acoustic guitar again. Actually had not done a lot on the acoustic guitar and was focused more on the piano for a number of years. Getting back into that, I barely knew how to play. I mean, I could make chords, and I started picking it back up in 2014 and really going deep with it. But so yeah, in Love Song Lullaby, those like delicate piano lines you hear in the background and stuff, it was really fun to mix some of the piano stuff I'd been tapping into with the current set of songs, and definitely sets the mood. It has that kind of why I call it Love Song Lullaby. I mean, that's part of the story, but definitely feels like a lullaby sort of thing.
Yeah, it does. There's something very soothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would like to know a little bit more about Library Land. As I said, my background so overpowers the library aspect of it, but
Yeah.
I'd like to know
Oh,
the
that's great.
inspiration.
My mom is a elementary school teacher and has been for like going on 30 years. and she loves it for that reason. And some of her coworkers that have heard it love it too. Like, library stories, imagination, and that's so great. I love that aspect of it. Actually, I have a friend of mine in Washington State I just talked to, and he downloaded the album, and he's got a newer Suburban that like automatically plays things from his Apple Music account or something. I don't know, but he just said he's got 4 kids, and he's like, every time I get in the car, that song just automatically comes on in my playlist, and they all just start cheering and are like, yay, Library Land. So I think that's the imagination of it is super fun. And but the other side of it, yeah, is of course the library studio in
I
Minneapolis
wondered, yeah. Yeah.
is where this was recorded, and Matt Patrick was the producer, and we just struck up a great friendship and a special artist producer dynamic that in all the challenges I was having personally, and the delays and having to pull the plug on the record and kind of get started and then stop, he was just such a reinforcing presence. And also his, yeah, I joke with him, I say, if you weren't a music producer, you'd be like a pastor or a counselor. He's just got that great presence, and that really helped me to unlock as an artist and as a songwriter in the studio. Is I had told him I want to do this more intimate, stripped down acoustic thing, but I was also terrified of doing that. I was like, as an artist, you can be tempted to use production to cover up any, I don't know, you can decide to do whatever you want, but I mean, production can be a crutch, if you overdo it and you're afraid to let people see and hear you as you are. And I knew that the songs I was writing needed to be preserved, or that the raw nature of them had to be retained, but I was at the same time very nervous about doing it, and he was just like totally on board from the beginning and helped me settle into that, I guess. And so, yeah, there was one point where I had to pull the plug, and it was really hard. But I called him up and said, could I come in and just hang out for the day? And he's like, yeah, come in. And me and my wife went in and hung out, and it was just such a wonderful time. And I was just so touched by his openness. And I wanted to write a song that would just bless him and honor him. And so one of the days we came in to do the tracking, I had this song written, and I didn't want to tell him what it was. I didn't want to tell him what it was about. So I just said, I got this song, but he's like, well, what should I call it? I got to start this session. I was like, just call it Surprise. And I just want to play it for you. And if you don't like it, we won't put it on the record, sort of thing. And he loved it. Of course, he loved it. I shouldn't say of course. I was nervous, but he loved it, and he jumped right in. And after I did the guitars and the vocals together, and I did the piano lines, then I got on the drums and he got on the bass, and we were able to track that together live, and kind of like we're just in 2 separate rooms, but we're playing it together, and it was so fun. It was just like a highlight of the record. One of the highlights for me was tracking that live with him, and it was just such a fun song. And I think the energy and the place that he's created there at the library is it's just so neat. And I think it's such a fixture in the Minneapolis area for so many artists too, which is something I just came to learn more and more, and so, yeah, I thought it was I think the song, I don't know, touches on the color and the atmosphere that's there at the library. So that was a fun way to write a song and share it with him like that.
I think that's great. I think it does justice. We hear a lot of good things about Matt Patrick a lot. And in my notes, I'm like,
Yeah.
is this for the studio? It's got to be for the,
Oh,
yeah.
so you were trying to tie that together. Yeah, it was. It definitely has is inspired by the library studio and by Matt Patrick. The other funny thing is I had been watching a classic fairy tale the night before I went to the studio that day. So it was like, I was watching this fairy tale with my kids. And then the next day I went to the studio and had this great time with Matt. And it was like, I think those things converged into this, like, the library studio is like this amazing fairy tale world that I want to go on an adventure to. So I loved going to the library, and I'm kind of sad that I can't continue. I'm just gonna have to make another record or
I was
something.
gonna say there's a cure for that.
Yes.
There's a cure for that. No, the album came out on October 15th.
Yep.
Was that a week ago too? Yeah,
Just
and
about.
then you played a show the night after.
Mhm.
What is it like to play? It is very personal music. How
Yeah.
was it to play in front of people, to play this in front of people,
Yeah. It's a little intimidating. I don't always realize that until I'm about to do it, and then I'm like, why am I doing this?
yeah,
I mean, I'm definitely not. I mean, I'm sort of a deep, sensitive guy, but it's not like that's not my mode all the time, you know. But when I'm writing, it can go that way. And then I have these songs that are so personal, and then I got to get up and play them for people, and it's like you can feel pretty exposed, but I think people really enjoy it though. But they do have to tune in. Every now and then, you do gigs or like a restaurant kind of thing where people are your kind of background music, and then it feels awkward to be playing songs like that in that environment. But no, the release show was very fun, super memorable, and actually Matt Patrick and Reese Kling accompanied me, so we actually did a band thing, and I really went big, and I did a 17 song set, and 13 of those we did as a band. And so there's a couple songs I did, quite a few actually, I mean, that weren't on the record, and some new material, and some songs that we were really able to kind of rock out on that weren't so acoustic. So yeah, it was fun.
good. I'm glad it is. It's a very, it's an uplifting yet at moments sad album. I think this is a perfect time for it because people are ready to. And I think we're just much more in tune. We have much more time for our feelings than we had 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We understand the importance of recognizing what's going on with us. If we if we want to make it to next Tuesday, I mean, it's just
yeah.
And
Yeah,
so I think
I agree with that. We need more, and we definitely need people coming together and supporting each other. So
yeah. Well, and I said that the idea that that you're sort of a force of keeping people moving forward, but there's a force that's helping you too. And I think that whether you're talking about with your family, but in a community-wide perspective as well. Awesome.
Yeah. And I tell my wife and my kids and some of the stuff, everybody's had to navigate through incredibly tough times now. But I know I wouldn't have been able to finish this record. And there's so many times in seasons past too, I wouldn't still be making music if it wasn't for God's grace helping me through. That's for sure.
Good. Well, he gave you some talent, and that's the start of it. And then the rest is on you. You've done well.
Thank you.
With it. Yeah.
I try my best.
It's good. That's good. I will put this in the notes, but for folks who are listening, where can they find you online?
Well, my website is johnarthurmusic.com, and that's JON. It's no H there. And then from there, I have smart link to the new album From the Marrow right on the homepage. So super convenient. Or I have links to my Spotify and other stuff there too. So
stuff.
website is a good landing pad.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. It's really fascinating to hear the backstory of because it's I always think the listener brings their own to the music too, but it's really fascinating to hear your story because I got a lot of the feelings, but but hard to know the exact story. So thank you so much for sharing in conversation, but sharing in music especially. It's a lovely album.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.